The pandemic requires urgent action, and the President, leading the Cabinet, met on the 15th of March and took very specific decisions. One of them was to declare the state of disaster in the country in terms of the National Disaster Management Act of 2002. Following that, the President, in his address to the nation later that night, called for an extraordinary response and announced a number of measures to limit contact between persons who may be infected and those who are not infected in order to reduce the spread of the disease using social distancing and hygiene measures. But notwithstanding this, some of the measures announced by the President could only be brought to bear through regulations made under the declaration of the state of emergency in terms of Section 27 of the Disaster Management Act. And since Sunday, legal representatives of the respective organs of state that play a key role in responding to COVID-19 have been at work to draft the regulations needed to further put into operation measures announced by the President. These regulations are a rule of order which have the force of law. So these regulations need to be acted upon because they are law. And the departments will further give directions or directives on other matters. And as the situation evolves, more regulations and more directives may have to be issued. And I think it's important to get further clarification from the ministers so that you can inform the country accurately. But also the issue of fake news or misrepresentation is under these regulations, because it is under these regulations an offense to deliberately misrepresent or even deliberately infect someone when you know you are positive for the coronavirus. So this is just a summary of what is in the regulations, but the various ministers will then give more details. Thank you.
I think for us, what is clear is that the limitations of rights in terms of Section 36 is now being enforced by these regulations that have been published by the Minister of Cogta. And in that regard, we will want to see maximum compliance across the country with the regulations, and any failure of compliance will be visited upon by the necessary actions by the law enforcement agencies. On any aspects of the regulations, with regards to the various issues, fake news, deliberate infections of other people, and other offenses that could happen, even including people not complying to the issue of less than 100 gatherings. So for us, this is a very important means to help us to combat this, to also enforce the issue of social distance. With regard to correctional services, as we speak, we are busy at the various correctional centers with the cleaning, with the hygiene processes that will be necessary for us to comply with the regulations, because the regulation says the visit is suspended for 30 days. We do not want to take any chance. Hence, we are currently busy with the processes of cleaning and ensuring that the environment is hygienic. It will enable us to minimize and prevent the corona from entering our correctional centers. And as and when the situation change, we will be able to further communicate. I think those are the only issues I will speak to, unless there will be questions. Thank you.
Minister Lamula and myself will have a further explanation, I'm told, tomorrow, but there are quick things that we can speak to. Yesterday, I think there was some press briefing where they spoke about getting permission from the police station if the numbers can increase or not. There is no such thing. Nothing of the sort. You don't go to police station, you go straight to funeral and you go with 100 people. You don't go to police station, you go to wedding, you go with 100 people. This law will never be watered down anywhere else. Whatever you have heard is not there, does not exist. What exists is, is what is written here. Indeed, Honorable President has invited the clergy and the people from the faith-based organization. Most of them, they preside over these funerals, over these weddings. I'm sure they'll also put the word that it's not negotiations, it's a law. As we speak, the police are meeting. We meet first thing early morning again, dealing with the guidelines. We're putting the response teams where you're supposed to be 100 will count to 100. Anything more than 100 will be requested to go. But if you continue to break the law, this law is very clear that will deal with organizers. And organizers will be liable for any of the broken law. It was very interesting, Minister Dlamini-Zuma. Every time this COVID-19 has been taking the lead, but this morning the lead was on alcohol matters. This morning the lead was on liquor matters. The closing at 6, yes indeed. Nobody consumes alcohol at 6 anywhere in the country except your house. Nobody. So there is one point that we need to clarify. They were asking about restaurants. Restaurants, you can continue to eat less than 50, but no alcohol, only food.
The effect of the COVID-19 on the economy is being closely watched. It will have an effect on our GDP, but our key concern now is to save lives and ensure that we minimize the economic cost. After we've defeated the virus, we will all need to work together to rebuild the economy. We've been in discussions with the private sector and organized labor to get broad support for government's actions and to mobilize their resources too, to complement and strengthen our efforts. The discussions have been positive, and across many sectors of the economy, we received pledges of support and partnership. Over the past few days, we've, through the National Department of Health, engaged the private healthcare industry to become part of government's coordinated effort to fight the virus. In order to facilitate discussions solely for the purpose of fighting the virus, and as part of the national health efforts coordinated by Minister Mkhize, we've been looking at the competition legislation and what exemptions may be required. Today, we have just published a regulation that deals with the health sector, and it will permit private healthcare providers to coordinate their actions as part of the National Department of Health's efforts. Working with retailers and the regulators in the past few days, all major retailers have now put limits on at least basic products in their stores. This has helped to calm panic buying. There's also been excellent cooperation from the retailers with government. They have committed to help us ensure that there are no unjustified price increases in this period. The retail groups include Shoprite Checkers, Pick n Pay, Woolworths, Spar, Game, Dion and Macro, as well as Clicks and Dis-Chem. Today, we issue directives under the Disaster Management Act and regulations under both the Competition Act and the Consumer Protection Act. These deal with pricing and supply matters during the national disaster to ensure that we do not have unjustified price hikes or stockpiling of goods. We are doing this to protect consumers and ensure fairness and promote social solidarity in this period. The regulations and directions provide for the following. On prices, price increases may not exceed the increase in the cost of the raw materials or inputs, and the profit level should not be hiked higher than in the period just before the outbreak of COVID-19. The regulations will cover the full supply chain and will limit price increases of suppliers in a similar fashion. On stockpiling, where people go into a shop and try to buy trolley loads of one product, all retailers will be required to take steps to limit the quantity of goods sold to any individual consumer, and a list of basic goods will be covered and gazetted. Retailers must take steps to maintain adequate stocks of basic goods during this period, including for weekends and month-end shopping. There are also provisions to ensure that wholesalers take steps to ensure that there's no stockpiling at the cash and carry retail and wholesale outlets.
For more, go to ewn.co.za.